The last time a president was impeached, the man serving as his chief of staff was John Podesta, whose name probably rings a bell. Podesta would go on to found the Center for American Progress and then work for President Obama and then quite famously chair Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential run and have his inbox hacked by Russian hackers who then leaked it to WikiLeaks. So we thought, who better to process what we're seeing now than the man himself? John Podesta joins me now. Thanks for coming on, John.
Nice to be back with you, Chris.
I guess the first thing is, do you support the president's impeachment? Do you think the facts as we know them support an impeachment?
Well, I think they certainly support the impeachment inquiry, and I would say, yes, they support an impeachment. He's really tried to almost blackmail a foreign leader to try to get them to interfere in our election. The founding fathers really were concerned about this when they wrote the Constitution and included the clause for impeachment about foreign interference in U.S. elections. And I think once the House Judiciary Committee and the House Intelligence Committee dig into this, I think that's what they're going to find. We learn new facts every day. Donald Trump says he was trying to prevent corruption in Ukraine. Now we see the two indictments of Rudy Giuliani's sidekicks today. It looks like they were trying to foment corruption rather than fight it.
You know, you worked in several White Houses, and White House Chief of Staff, I'm wondering what you made when you read those call notes of that phone call, having been in on calls between the U.S. president and a foreign head of state. Did it strike you as horrifying as it apparently struck some people in the White House?
Yeah, I think it's, Houston, we have a problem. He's saying, I'll get around to the meeting. I'm going to hold back the money that Congress has appropriated. But first, I need a favor. And what's the favor? To investigate my principal opponent or a principal opponent in the upcoming election, asking them directly to interfere and intervene in the U.S. election. I think that is an abuse of power and something that obviously the Congress is going to need to look into. Nancy Pelosi was reluctant to go down this path, but I think once that whistleblower complaint came out, once that MEMCON was released by the White House, I think she had no choice. And I think the right thing to do is to investigate this and then render a judgment whether he, in fact, abused his office. But I think the facts are pretty plain in that memorandum.
You worked in White Houses. I know people that have worked in White Houses. My wife was in the White House counsel's office in Barack Obama's administration. Right. And those folks tend to be pretty they tend to take seriously the executive power and executive prerogative, right? They take seriously the assertions of executive privilege. They don't want Congress to just be able to get their hands on anything that happens in a White House. As someone who comes from that background, has that experience, what do you make of the assertions the White House is making in that 8-page letter and other places that basically Congress can't get anything?
Well, look, it goes against hundreds of years of constitutional history and 100 years of constitutional jurisprudence where the Supreme Court has clearly recognized Congress's power to investigate. It's an inherent power in the Constitution. They've affirmed it again and again. The first cases, of course, were with what was always thought of as the most corrupt administration in history, the Harding administration. But I think, Trump may outdo that. But the Supreme Court has always recognize the power of Congress to investigate, and that includes the power to engage in an impeachment inquiry. I think they've handled this seriously. They've tried to develop the factual basis for this, and all they've been met with is a giant stonewall and a laughable letter from the White House counsel.
You were the chief of staff during the last impeachment that happened with Republicans in the House and President Clinton in the White House. Compare that experience and the context there to what we're seeing now.
Well, look, I think, again, this was an exercise. It began with the Starr investigation and went on and on and on, and ultimately resulted in the referral by Mr. Starr of his report to the House. The House voted articles of impeachment. They rejected a couple. They went to the Senate. The Senate ultimately heard the evidence. They conducted a trial. They listened to the president's lawyers. They concluded, well, I think most people in the Senate thought what the president had done was worthy of, some scorn, that it was not an impeachable offense. He did not abuse the power and the office of the presidency. I think this is quite different. And because this is the president using his office, using his power, using the instruments of government, trying to insert Rudy Giuliani into the direct instruments of U.S. foreign policy, to do what? To help himself personally, to help his campaign, and to get a foreign government to directly interfere with the United States election. I think they're quite different, and I think that this is at the heart, again, of what the founders were worried about when we were a young nation, and they were worried about foreign interference, the big European powers exerting influence on the electoral process, on our president and other leaders of our government. And that's why they put this power to remove a president into the Constitution.
You're still associated with CAP, I know, and today I'm talking to you as millions of folks, 2 million, I think, in California have their power shut down as PG&E, right, the utility there, prophylactically shuts it down to maybe avoid wildfires. It's this kind of like cocktail of climate disaster in which, delayed infrastructure investments meet rising temperatures. CAP has a big climate plan that you guys unveiled today. How big is the scope? Is this in the same category as a kind of Green New Deal that we've heard about?
Yeah, I think the transformation of our economy that the science is asking for and dictating, really, is that we have to go from a very highly polluting energy system to one that's what people refer to as net zero. We have to eliminate emissions. We have to be able to draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. That's an awesome task, but it's also a chance of great opportunity to put people to work, to build new industries. But what it's going to mean is, for example, all new vehicles by 2035 are going to have to be zero emission. All new buildings and appliances are going to have to be run on electricity. All that electricity is going to have to be powered by zero carbon electricity from renewable resources and other means of getting zero carbon electricity. That's a lot of work. It's trillions of dollars of investment. It's an exciting opportunity. And I think, Chris, really 30 years from now, people may look back and judge Donald Trump's biggest crime as the fact that he's been on a rampage to send the country in the wrong direction, not deal with this existential threat to our planet and to humanity. But I'm confident that the Democrats are stepping up to this in the presidential campaign, and we can get the job done.
Quickly, final question. If you were chief of staff and you saw what was happening now, if you were Donald Trump's chief of staff, tough thought experiment, you saw the leaks, you saw the people coming forward, would you be nervous about where this is going?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, you don't know what the facts are. Again, these indictments today are really shocking because these were people who met with the president, evidently, who Giuliani was using as a conduit to the Ukrainian government, who were trying to steer contracts to Trump-friendly people in the United States. You really don't know where that's going to end. You had Rick Perry over there trying to put Trump-friendly people onto the Ukrainian gas utility. I think they've projected onto Biden the kind of corruption that they're engaged in themselves.
John Podesta, thank you so much for making time.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.